Doing well this evening. We are going to pick up where our last teachers left off in our certification course. And if you have your workplace manuals, you can turn over to page 85. And we are going over some scenarios here, okay? We're talking about, if you remember in the previous class, this topic is on respect. Okay, so that's what we're learning all about in this chapter, respect. And now we're talking about putting it into practice. And as we go through these scenarios, keep in mind that, when you're teaching this in a workplace setting to students, you're going to have, many students who have probably experienced these same situations or something very similar to that. So our goal in teaching this to them is to be able to give them the tools that they need so whenever these situations do come up, they can handle them appropriately. So let's look at scenario B. Scenario B. It says, Edward is a customer service representative. He is still new at his duties. On this particular day, he has several transactions that are complicated and time-consuming, requiring him to frequently call his supervisor for help. The fifth time he called for her assistance, she became frustrated and told him in front of the customers, "If I had known you would be this much trouble, I would have hired someone else." Okay, so let's put ourselves in Edward's shoes for a second. Okay, you have a very important job of helping the customers, and you're dealing with many different people who, have many different needs, okay? And many different types of situations here that, you're dealing with just in a single day. And, this can be a very stressful job, especially if it's just, if it all depends on you getting it done. So how do you think Edward felt? He probably felt humiliated, frustrated. He probably was shocked. He didn't realize that, this person was just going to tell him off in front of all the other customers. And I'm sure he probably felt very embarrassed as well. And, here he's looking to his supervisor for guidance and for help because he doesn't want to mess anything up, and this is the response that he gets, okay? So, question 2, how should Edward respond? What would be the respectful thing to do? Okay, so he could choose not to respond at all, knowing that, his supervisor is already frustrated. He could politely explain that he would rather ask for help than mess up someone's account. Okay, but remember what we learned in the self-control unit, and if I can have my first overhead here, on page 92, it's test your knowledge on communication. And we have 3 questions here. How much of your communication is based on the words you say? And that's only 7%. So a very small percent of communication is based on the words you say. Now, number 2, how much of your communication is based on your facial expressions? And that's 55%. And number 3, how much of your communication is based on your tone of voice? That's 38%. So at the bottom it says, when it comes to communication, there's often a great deal of emphasis put on words, but you may be surprised to know that others interpret most of what we are saying from our facial expressions and our tone of voice than from our words. So if he is to, make this comment and say, well, I'd rather have to ask for your help than mess up someone's account, he would need to make sure that he's saying it in a calm and respectful tone of voice. And also, in the self-control units, on page 107, we talk about the RESPOND acronym. And this is something that we go over a lot in these classes, but that's because it's so important, not only to memorize what each letter stands for, but to be able to put it into practice whenever we're faced with a situation. So I want to go over the RESPOND acronym. R is remain calm. The last thing you want to do in a crisis situation is become agitated and lose your cool. Remaining calm will help you think rationally and logically. Okay, so you have to calm yourself down first, because if you're not calm, it's not going to help the situation. You're not going to be able to make a rational decision. E, evaluate the situation. Not all situations may become dangerous, but sometimes the danger level can be higher than others. You must be extremely careful not to aggravate the situation. Look for ways to reach a compromise and humbly apologize when appropriate. Okay, so, he could say, I'm very sorry that, I'm taking up a lot of your time. I just don't want to mess anything up. And that's taking the humble route. S is stay objective. Try not to take the situation personally. This can be very difficult to do, especially when the other person is pushing some of your anger triggers. Using active listening in this step can help to diffuse the situation. Even an angry person can tell when someone is trying to listen and understand. So, him calmly making that statement could be, yes, then, we have, what his supervisor said: if I had known you'd be this much trouble, I would have hired someone else. Okay, so she was very frustrated, but him calmly, making this statement that was mentioned here could help her to calm down. P, practice being polite. You can maintain your self-control by always being aware of your words and the effect they have on others. What you say and how you say it can either improve or worsen the situation. Remember, it is what you say, how you say it, and to whom you are saying it that count. Okay? O is overcome the desire to retaliate. You will need to overcome the desire to want to yell or fight back. Remember, you can walk away whenever it is appropriate to do so. Okay, so, being in a situation like that, sometimes the initial response is just to yell back at them or say something to get even in that situation. But we want to overcome that desire to retaliate, because that's going to cause a bigger scene and make it a whole lot worse. N is negate the negative. An angry, out-of-control person can be very negative. The use of vulgar language, threats, and even racial slurs are quite possible. In an emotionally charged situation, it is up to you, the one who is in control, not to get caught up in all the negativity. And D is determined. Being determined means setting your mind in advance to maintain positive communication, even in a situation where someone else has lost control. Okay, so that's a really great acronym to always keep in our minds, and really go over this with your students. Encourage them to, put this acronym up where they can see it, where they can learn it, and put it into use in every situation. Okay, so question 3. What consequence could result from handling this situation disrespectfully? What consequence could come? Well, the business could lose the account when people see their workers can't even get along amongst themselves. Edward could lose his temper at his boss, which will only lead to him getting in trouble and possibly fired. So just in the way he responds could, determine whether he still has a job by the end of the day. So that's why it's so important that we pay attention to the things that we are feeling, what we're thinking when we are in a situation like this. At the bottom here it says, disrespect from an authority figure, especially in front of others, can be, to say the least, very uncomfortable. We expect an authority figure to be our example and our guide. When those in authority fail to live up to our expectations, it can be devastating. And if you've ever, been in a situation and have experienced this before, when you're teaching this, you're going to have students who have experienced this before. they know how hurtful it can be. So, on the flip side of that, get them to think, when you're in a position of authority, how are you going to treat those that are under you? If you don't want, people making comments, being disrespectful, treating you unfairly, then don't do it to other people. Treat others the way that you want to be treated, as the Golden Rule states. It says, maintaining your respect for someone in authority who is disrespectful towards you takes self-control, patience, and humility. Stop before responding and consider the consequences that could result from handling the situation in a negative way. Consider what your priority is. Is it getting even with the boss or keeping your job? And, that's why we have to make sure our emotions are under control, because when we let them get the best of us, then we're going to do or say something that we later on regret. And most likely it will be too late. Once you say something, you can't take it back. Once you do something, you can't take that action back. You need to stop and think first, which, brings to mind the STOP acronym that we've all learned very well in the Peaceful Solution. But not only is it important to know it and have it memorized, but we have to be able to apply it. It says, how you respond could very well be the difference between keeping your job and losing it, okay? And at the bottom there we have a quote that you'll see on the screen. It says, true leaders are those who can show respect to others even when others are being disrespectful to them. And that makes me think of right over on page 84, the quote at the bottom says, never fight fire with fire. When we choose to respond to disrespect with more disrespect, it's like adding fuel to the fire. And what occurs when you add fuel to the fire? It only grows. It gets worse. And for your notes, you can reference, that's on page 115 of the respect unit. And we have it on the overhead here. Responding to disrespect with more disrespect just adds fuel to the fire. And another reference is in the respect unit again on page 127. I have an overhead for that one. And the title is Maintaining Control. And these are really, again, really great steps for, whenever we encounter a situation here. It says, study these steps for keeping your composure in a difficult situation. Remain calm. Getting upset will not help the situation. In this case, it is okay to talk to yourself. This is called self-talk. Use self-talk to calm yourself down and stay in control. By remaining calm, you will be better able to think clearly and rationally. And it's also important to try to keep a positive mindset. The things that we dwell on, it's going to come through in our everyday actions. So when a situation comes up, if we're just worried about getting even and getting back at this person, that's all we're going to be focused on. But if we say, okay, this is a really hard situation, but I'm not going to let it get me down. I'm going to remain calm. I'm going to stop and think and consider my options and proceed with a choice that, is not going to cause harm to myself or others, and that is going to make peace in this situation. The next step, use a respectful tone of voice. This means no screaming and yelling. Even though you are upset, you can choose to use a normal tone of voice. Screaming at someone is disrespectful. If the other person lacks self-control, the result will be a screaming match in which no one wins. Okay, the next one is be polite. The one after that, always try to find a peaceful solution. Keep in mind that a problem without a solution is a problem left unsolved. It is up to you to offer a suggestion that will best fit the situation and end in a peaceful solution. So, you can be the one, let your students know, they can be the one that determines how the situation is going to end, whether it's in a positive or a negative way, just by the way that they choose to respond. And lastly, don't hold a grudge or hold on to unkind thoughts about the person. Don't treat the person badly. Learn to forgive. Holding a grudge will lead to disrespect on your part. Remember, 2 wrongs never make a right. Maintain your positive values. Okay, so again, that was in the respect unit on page 127, maintaining control. All right, so let's turn the page to page 86, and we're going to look at scenario number 3. Or I'm sorry, scenario C. It says, Miss West is a very active woman. She has been working at the same agency for 5 years and really enjoys her work. She was very comfortable and always respected in her work environment. However, all of that changed when Mr. Smith was hired as her new boss. Mr. Smith made no secret that he found Mrs. West attractive. Soon his interest in her became the talk of the office. Mrs. West, in no uncertain terms, made it clear to him that she was married and not interested in him at all. Mr. West refused to take no for an answer and continued to pursue Mrs. West despite her rejection. Okay, and sadly, this scenario here is something that occurs very often in the workplace. So once again, we're having empathy, we're putting ourselves in this person's shoes. Mrs. West, she really enjoyed her job. She did it very well. And, when you enjoy your work, when you enjoy something that you do, you're going to put your best effort into it. So that's what she did. She really enjoyed her job. But, now that someone else was hired, it left her feeling very uncomfortable. And, not only that, but this person is her boss. So it's someone that she's supposed to be able to trust. She's supposed to be able to go to them for help, for guidance, to receive instruction. But instead of her being able to focus on that, now she has to worry about this. And that can really, take over a person's mind when all they're worrying about is what this person is going to say or what they're going to do next. So, she's not able to focus on her job anymore. Now, the question here is, how can Mrs. West maintain her self-respect in this difficult situation? Okay, what can she do to maintain her self-respect in this difficult situation? Because, she cannot change this other person. She cannot change, what they think, how they respond, but what can she do? Okay, so she can refuse to acknowledge or comment on her boss's inappropriate behavior in front of him, and she can be sure to never be alone with him. And that is key because, if she was alone with him and something were to go wrong, she would have no witness to, whenever she went to report it, it would be her word against his. They wouldn't know who to believe. Okay, so that's a very important point, right there. To never be alone with someone when you're in a situation like this. Okay, so question 2. What could Mrs. West do to respectfully resolve this situation? What could she do? She could go immediately to Human Resources and report the behavior, which is what she needs to do. She needs to report it. And it's very important that she goes to someone in a higher authority and report what's going on, how she's being treated. Speaking up, okay, that's something that, as you're teaching this, stress that. It's important to speak up in this situation. So what consequences could result from handling the situation disrespectfully? Okay, it could turn into a he said, she said situation in which she is included in the behavior, and she could lose respect from her coworker if she seems to be participating in the behavior in any way. Okay, so, if she chooses to make remarks back or, do anything that would make it seem like she is participating in the behavior, then she would be responsible for it as well. So going down to the bottom of the page here in that first paragraph, it says, sexual harassment is one of the worst forms of disrespect that can be experienced in the work environment. Sexual harassment can take many different forms. Crude jokes, subtle comments about various body parts, staring, and inappropriate touch are all constitute sexual harassment. In fact, any unwanted comment, touch, or look can be construed as sexual harassment. This should not be part of the work environment and should be dealt with swiftly so as not to encourage the unwanted behavior. Okay, so it should be dealt with as soon as possible so that, something can immediately be done, action can be taken to solve the problem so it doesn't get worse. Sexual harassment can cause the victim to feel uncomfortable and afraid. Some also feel embarrassed to seek help and unsure of where to go for advice, especially if the unwanted attention is coming from someone in authority. And I underline this next part. If you are experiencing this form of disrespect, do not keep it a secret. And that's so important. Even if, you're scared, you're embarrassed to speak up, you need to speak up. This is something that you do not keep a secret. And it's not just saying, tell anyone about it. No, go to a trusted adult and let them know, a trusted authority figure, and let them know what is going on. Document any and all important encounters for your own records. Report the unwanted behaviors to an appropriate authority figure or someone in your resource department. And then, in front of a witness, tell that person in no uncertain terms that you do not want his or her attention, and that you do not want his or her attention, that you want the harassment to stop, and that you will pursue legal measures if the harassment persists. Okay? So, remember, when teaching this, keep these tips in mind and really stress this with your students. They have to speak up. Remaining silent only leads to these types of situations getting worse and possibly very dangerous. And at the bottom, we have a word of caution. Be sure not to encourage the unwanted behavior in any way. Don't flirt or appear flattered by the attention in any way. Dress and behave modestly so as not to draw unwanted attention to yourself. Never allow yourself to be alone with that person. Being alone with the individual puts you in a vulnerable position, and without a witness, you will have a difficult time proving that he or she said or did something inappropriate. And you can reference there, when you're teaching this class, the respect unit on page 141, and I have an overhead. We're not going to go into the points on there, but they're really great points to keep in mind when dealing with these particular situations. So at the bottom here, we have the quote. It says, "Character is gained by many acts. It may be lost by a single one." Okay, so that's a very powerful statement. All it takes is one single negative choice to ruin, a positive character, someone's positive reputation. And, it doesn't mean that if someone has made a wrong choice, a negative choice, that, they can't turn their lives around. It doesn't mean that at all, because everyone makes mistakes, and, people, as you're teaching this to people who have never heard of the peaceful solution before, you're going to hear a lot of, situations where they have made, they made the wrong choice. But they can begin to make those positive choices that will build their positive character. And it's something that takes lots of time and effort. All right, so let's go over to page 87, and we're going to do scenario D. Scenario D. Customers at the One Stop are allowed 3 free packs of ketchup with a hamburger and fries meal. Reggie asks the clerk for 3 additional packs of ketchup. You'll have to pay for extra ketchup, said the clerk in an irritated voice. Pay for extra ketchup? Responded Reggie in disbelief. The clerk rolled her eyes. I don't make the rules, she responded in a sullen tone. Turning to the other customers, Reggie continued, how are they going to decide how much ketchup a person should have with their meal? I bought a meal and I should get as much ketchup as I want. The cashier glared at him. That'll be 75 cents. This is unbelievable, said Reggie as he handed her the money. Whatever, said the clerk under her breath as she threw the ketchups across the counter towards Reggie. Okay, so who do you think was disrespectful in this scenario? Well, I'm sure we all can agree that both the customer and the clerk show disrespect. Okay, the clerk immediately snapped at Reggie when he asked for more ketchup, and instead of the customer responding calmly, he chose to respond with disrespect, and he snapped back. And so then what occurred? Then the clerk made another disrespectful comment, and they just went back and forth. So what could each person have said to show respect to each other? What could each person have said to show respect to each other? Okay, the customer could have asked for the policy regarding the ketchup to be posted somewhere so that no one else is surprised to be told that. Okay, so, he could calmly ask, could we have this policy posted so that everyone is aware of this, because I wasn't aware. And the cashier could have explained the policy and apologized for the misunderstanding. Okay, and simply by, apologizing for the misunderstanding, that right there could have solved the conflict, because yes, he might have been very frustrated that he only could have a certain amount of ketchup when he was expecting to get as much as he wanted with his meal. But just by, the clerk saying, I'm sorry about the misunderstanding, if you want extra ketchup, you can pay for it, but I'm not allowed to give out more than the allotted amount. Okay, so there are many different ways that this situation could have been handled to avoid the conflict. And then the last two questions here, these are to ask your students. If you were the clerk, how would you handle the situation? Learning the things that we've went over so far in the peaceful solution, how would you handle this situation? And number 4, if you were Reggie, what would you have said? Okay? So at the bottom it says, the need for respectful communication and interactions cannot be overstated. And I underlined that sentence right there. The need for respectful communication and interactions cannot be overstated. Customers should be treated with the utmost care and concern. And this means that those who deal with customers should communicate using proper tone of voice, facial expressions, and body language, regardless of how the customer behaves. Okay, so notice how they said, not just proper tone of voice, but proper facial expressions and our body language, no matter how you are treated by the customer, which can be really difficult. But, it doesn't matter if the customer shows us respect or disrespect. We should always, strive to treat them with the utmost respect, because we're there to serve them. We're there to meet their needs. And you can reference, I don't have an overhead for this one, but it's the respect unit, page 118. It talks about being prepared to be faced with disrespect. Employees must be trained in how to listen effectively and to remain calm and in control in order to meet the needs of those they have been hired to serve. It is also important that employees are aware that their main duty is to serve the customer, and sometimes this takes going the extra mile, going out of the way to see that a customer's needs are met and that he or she is satisfied. And, one thing I want to mention here is, as an employee, you represent the company that you work for. So that's a big responsibility resting on your shoulders. How you respond, really shows the customers, the people that you're serving, how this business operates. It really shows the reputation of the business. Is it positive or is it negative? So always keeping that in mind. You're not just doing it for yourself, but you're representing that whole company that you work for. It's on you. Okay, and this last paragraph, even if the customer isn't always right, which is a standard policy in the service world, that the customer is always right, the customer should always be treated with respect. All employees must make every effort to satisfy the customer's needs and to resolve all issues peacefully and politely. This will make the customers frequent a business and recommend it to their friends. Okay, so with this, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the next teacher.
Hello, and it's great to see everyone here again at the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. I just want to say before I continue on with Sarah, she did a great job, and I know that you all are so pleased to hear the knowledge that comes forth from Sarah. She's been using this program like all her life, so she's a great asset to the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. We here at the headquarters of Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, we really are family. And when you're working for the same goals and looking to better yourself as a person, having a better character, you really rely on one another to help you, and that's what the Peaceful Solution does. And that's when we teach this to workplaces. It's very important to let your employees know that this is a training, and it's not that you're saying as the employer that you're a better person than they are. And when you let them know that you're striving to be a better person and that you found this program that's going to help us, make this here workplace better, they will see that they're not like put down as a lesser person, but that the quality of our character is going to change by helping one another. And that way your workplace will be a very joyful place to be. On the end of that page, 87, did we have a slide for that to show that quote down there, the need for respectful communication? Do we have that? No? Okay, the need for respectful communication and interactions cannot be overstated. What's saying is that is very important. A respectful communication and interactions is what serving others is all about. So let's go on and turn over to page 88, and we're going to start scenario E. Mr. Kane was really pressed for time. As he waited his turn in line at the sandwich shop, he thought about the list of things he had to do. For starters, he had to buy lunch, drop off his suits at the dry cleaner, get back to the office, and eat lunch all in 1 hour. Suddenly, Mr. Kane realized that the line was not moving. The cashier was having a personal conversation with her friend. 2 minutes went by. And that's where minutes hang like hours and you're constantly looking at your clock. Mr. Kane looked impatiently at his watch. The cashier and her friend casually continued their conversation as a line of people waited to be served. "Excuse me," Mr. Kane said politely to the cashier. "Can you please take my order? I'm on a very tight schedule." Rolling her eyes and stepping to the side, the friend snidely said to the cashier, "Some people act like they're so important that they can't wait." Wow, you ever been in that situation? I've been in that situation, and it's very frustrating. You want to just go over and say something, but we use self-control. And I think that Mr. Kane handled that very, very nicely. He excused himself, and then he made his request made known. It says here, do you think the cashier and her friend were respectful in this scenario? Well, we can see that they weren't respectful because the line was getting longer, the people were waiting, and they were expecting to be served promptly. So when it was made known to them that, hey, I'm waiting in line and I really am on a tight schedule, they still didn't respond in a positive way. So even sometimes when you do use self-control and you're the one that is practicing the peaceful solution, you're not always going to be responded to in a polite way. So that's why you have to continue in everything you've been taught in the peaceful solution. And remember, in that case, you're the customer, but you're still going to show respect. Do you think that Mr. Kane handled the situation respectfully? And of course we said yes, he did, because he knew what was all going on in his mind. He knew how he needed to get going. And yes, he looked impatiently at his watch, but he didn't respond that way. So that was building up in his mind, that he was getting a little impatient. I know that feeling, because in the character education program, that's one quality that I know I need to keep check on in myself, because I can get very impatient sometimes. So when I get that way, I know that I have to use self-control. And just like he did, he used self-control. If you were Mr. Kane, how would you have handled this situation? Have you ever seen someone in that situation, like in line at like the grocery store or at the post office, and you see that same situation, that same scenario, where they're great friends, they haven't seen each other a while, and they're going on and on and on, and it's like you just want to go up and say, I'm glad you get to see each other, but we really got to get going too. You really want to say something. And I've even taken it to the point where it has occurred to me, and I later on went and found the owner, and I explained the situation. And I said to her, I said, I don't want to get her in trouble, but she really needs help understanding that, that wasn't really a great way to treat me as a person, and you might want to explain how she can handle that better. And it was taken very well. I mean, the employer was very glad to know that had occurred, and hopefully she handled it in a great way where the one being corrected would accept that correction. Because remember, you can give correction in many different ways, but if you give it with a very kind and knowing that someone needs help understanding something, and that you're the teacher, that you as an employer are a teacher to your employee at that time. You're not just their employer, you're their teacher. And you need to tell them and teach them by your example what you are expecting out of them in your business. So that's why it's very important to make, as the owner, to make your expectations known to the people that are working for you. And when that is done, it's a beautiful thing, because that opens ways of communication, and the person that is being taught, it's going to be like a father, son, mother, daughter type relationship. You're going to have that great respect and that great honor for each other, like it should be. Let's go down here, and it says, a customer should never have to wait for help while an employee finishes a personal phone call, catches up on paperwork, talks to a friend, or stocks shelves. If the employee is in the process of a duty that cannot be left unfinished, then the customer should be kindly told that he or she will be helped in just a minute. A customer should never be made to feel ignored because the employee is occupied. There should be no task of greater importance than serving or assisting a client or customer. Now, as you being the owner in your workplace, if you never express that to someone that's working for you, don't assume they're going to know it. You'll have to explain that to them. You'll have to show them. Yes, you might be something, the water's running and you have to fix it or something, and you can't just come, but you can let the person know, hey, I'll be with you. I'm really sorry, there's something malfunctioning with this thing here. And they might even come over and help you, help you get it fixed. But never let your customers go without knowing that you're going to take care of them. But don't assume that your employees know that. Always express to them what you expect out of them as their employer. The one last thought on this topic. Every business, whether it provides food or furniture, should make sure that their products are of highest quality. No one wants to spend his hard-earned money to get a substandard product. Fairness, honesty, and dependability, these are the traits of a successful, service-oriented business. There's a saying that the best advertisement for a company is the positive rumors spread by a satisfied customer. And that's it. I mean, when you have satisfied customers, they're going to brag on your business. And when you have a quality of how to serve your customers, and you teach that to your employees and show them how important that is, then the people that come in, your customers, they're going to brag all the day, and you know what? You're going to get more business. And that's what you really need as employers, to teach your employees, is that our standard is going to be the peaceful solution. And if our company grows and we get financially better off, guess what? It's going to be like a co-op type thing. You're going to probably get a raise. The longer you work here, the better quality of service you give, I'm going to see that. So you want to set that carrot before your employees, too, of showing them that I'm not just going to want you to be a great asset to my company without you being recompensated for it. So that's another thing. You want to just let them know that there's benefits to all of it. It's not just, I want you to do this, but it's going to also teach you how to be a better person, and that will flow from your workplace into their private homes, because they're going to see that you're teaching them something there. You're giving them something of great value that isn't just $10 an hour at the end of the day and the end of the week, that check, but you're giving them a quality of life that they can take over into their own life, and to use the standard for their families and their interactions everywhere they go. So it's not just, let's read this book and get this over with and go on living. This is a life-changing program. And it's not just for the workplace, but everything that you teach in that workplace is going to benefit in every aspect of their life. On page 89, let's go to scenario F. It was Denise's first day as a receptionist at the Mount Best View Hotel. She had worked hard to complete the training required. Denise felt a deep sense of satisfaction and looked forward to learning all she could so she could do her duties to the best of her ability. There's some really great qualities there in this woman. You can see that already, because she worked hard. She had that deep sense of satisfaction. She obviously had great work ethics, and she was responsible. As she returned to her desk after lunch, she overheard two of her coworkers talking. One said, "Her name is Denise. She seems nice enough, but you know why she got the job, don't you?" The other person responded, "Yeah, we need at least one of her type to fill the quota," responded the second speaker, laughing softly as she spoke. Denise's deep sense of satisfaction turned to a deep sense of sadness as she slowly sat down. Now, what do you sense was going on in this scenario right here? What did you get in your mind? Now, it didn't say all the content of what was going on, but in your mind you could really see what was really going on. That certain quota some companies have, where they have to have so many of each nationality. And so in that scenario, there was some kind of racist type thing going on, because they weren't looking at that woman as Denise as a person. They were looking at her stereotype, what type of person they felt that racial thing or that ethnicity that she fell into. Oh, she's that type of person. And we needed one of those. What does that do? Why were Denise's coworkers' remarks disrespectful? How did that make Denise feel disrespected? Because it puts us in a group instead of seeing each person for the individual that they are. And when you do that, you miss out on a lot because you already have set things going on in your mind. And that's where you have to be really careful, because you know what? You could be missing out on a really great relationship with this person if that's how you're going to continue to look at her. And you could see by Denise's response when she heard that a great sense of sadness, because she felt she did this job well. She trained well. She worked hard to complete the training. She had satisfaction in what she was doing. But yet, they were looking at her as a type and not as a person. So how do you think her coworkers made Denise feel? Well, we saw that. Very disrespected, sad. You know, you train hard, you work hard. She obviously did that. It said she had a deep sense of satisfaction. And so you're going into this new job and you're excited and you want to do it the best you can, and you really trained hard, and then you're judged on what you are and not who you are. That's where we must be very careful. And that's where we teach our employees that everyone has value, that everyone has a right to be joyful, and everyone has the right to prove themselves of what they are, and that we don't judge them by, what they were born into. How do you think Denise should handle this situation? I thought about this. I thought, well, she could get upset and tell them how she felt. Or she could go to someone in authority and let them know what she overheard. Or she could decide in herself that I'm going to do the best job I can, and my works will prove myself. I'm going to treat these people like they've never been treated. I'm going to give them a great hello every day, and I'm going to bend over backwards. I'm going to be humble. And then without any even correction, you would see that the people would know that they were wrong in how they judged this woman. They probably would be ashamed without even having to be told, that they did something wrong. That, I think, is, that way of doing it, I think, is an amazing way to look at it, because, in this program, it isn't out to prove anything to anyone else. In this program, the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, it's about bettering yourself, deciding who you want to be, not making judgments on anyone else. Obviously, these two women that were talking about her weren't taught respect, weren't taught these qualities that you have the opportunity as an employer to teach your employees. And when you do that, everyone in your community or uses your services are going to notice that you're different. They're going to say, there's something different about your employees. There's something different that's going on in here. Every time I come in here, I'm treated so well. And that is the reward that you will get when you teach this to your employees. And make it to where they'll want to do this, that they'll want to be the different one. There's a lot of bad situations in the world. And people haven't really been taught how to treat each other well. But when you take this program to your employees and you sit down and teach them, they're going to be amazed, because we all were amazed when when this program was set before us. and we were shown how we can be a better person. And then your next door shop will come over and say, what are you all doing different? Because everybody keeps bragging on you when they come out of your store, and everybody's joyful when they come out of your store. What are you selling? And it won't be nothing about their selling. It'll be, hey, I like coming in here. You ever go to a store that you just love to go into? I do that. I have one that I just love to go into that store. It isn't even that I'm really there to even buy anything or, have to look for something. I know that the people are going to come up to me and say, hey, how have you been? I missed you. I'm glad you're back. Are you looking for something specific this day? And I'll usually say, no, I'm just browsing. And they'll say, well, okay, well, I'll let you go. And then they'll come back and say, well, if you do need anything, let me know. And it's like just that quality of being treated that way as a human being makes you feel important. And that's why it's so important to tell your employers that, to tell them what you expect out of them, to tell them what you're hoping to accomplish by teaching them this peaceful solution. Continuing on now, racism, discrimination, and stereotyping are all forms of extreme disrespect. Not only should this not be tolerated in the work environment, it should not be tolerated in any area of our lives. Sadly, however, some persist with intolerance and devaluing of others based on the color of their skin, nationality, or religion. We should never, now this is never assume that anyone is hired for an ulterior purpose. In entertaining this line of thought, we demonstrate our own prejudice and lack of tolerance for others. And that right there sets a division. And that's not what the peaceful solution is about, not division. It's bringing people together as a oneness, as a part of the human race, as every human being has value. And when we show your employees that this is what you expect out of them, and help them to realize that if they have these things, that they need to examine themselves, because you can't really serve someone with all your heart and give 100% to someone if you've already laid a foundation of a division. Did you know that you could harbor racist and stereotypical views about others without realizing it? That's what this program is all about, self-evaluation. When you see something in yourself that you think, I guess it's not really like what it should be, that's what they're asking you to do. Think about how you feel. If you see a white person walking in the room, a dark person walking in the room, a purple person walking in the room, has your thought changed in any of those? If it did, that's where you got to start thinking, I don't know any of these, but yet I still had a different concept when I saw the different ones come in. Not, wow, I can't wait to get to know that person. And there's another one that I've never seen before. So that's where you have that self-examination. Our families, family values, environment, and the media can influence our thinking and feelings about others. Honestly, evaluating our views and our beliefs will enable us to weed out these self-defeating, destructive beliefs. If you have difficulty accepting someone who has a different nationality, ethnicity, or religion than you, ask yourself the following questions. Answer them honestly to gain insight into your beliefs about others. And the first question you want to ask yourself is, why do I dislike this person? Is it because of the individual's color, nationality, religious beliefs, or ethnicity? Especially if you've not really got to know this person very well and you start having these negative feelings towards them, you might want to think of something, examine yourself there and teach your employees to examine, where did that stem from? Was it when you were younger and you were taught something from your uncle or your your neighbor, or you heard a negative comment that you never really checked to see if it was a great value, because you didn't even know what to look for values. Not until you come to the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program do you even know what a great value is. It's when you come here you realize that, wow, I never thought about character much. I just thought it was all personality. I just don't like the way that person is. I don't like the way the things they do, but it wasn't really their personality that you might not have liked or that you really did like. It was some character qualities that they had that you liked to see in that person or you didn't. But it's not until you get here and you start examining yourself and learning and putting these things into practice that is where you see that the Peaceful Solution teaches you how to be a better person. Okay, the second thing you want to ask yourself is, have I taken the time to get to know this person as an individual? Or am I making assumptions about him or her based on my personal beliefs? And that's what we just discussed. Do I make generalizations about a group of people based on the behaviors of a few? And that's where we see problems in society, because you have one group of people that look at another group of people, and the hatred has already been formed because it might have been passed down through generations, but now it's the time to realize that we are all the same. We are people. We are human beings. We all have value. So if a coworker makes discriminatory remarks, do not agree in any way. Laughing or smiling at discriminatory jokes or remarks indicate that you agree with what is being said. When we choose to practice self-control by refusing to discriminate against others, we demonstrate acceptance. By diligently studying, practicing, and applying the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program to our lives, we can begin treating others with the respect and fairness they deserve. And that you will also be treating yourself with respect that you deserve, because when you start changing and you see you're becoming a better person and you see you're looking at things differently because you're being taught the right thing, you're going to start feeling joyful inside. And you're going to just be so thankful that this program has been set before you, that you as an employer can really find great satisfaction in teaching this program to your employees and see the changes that are being made, and to see that they're going to want this, and that you're actually going to become more of a family when you're working then, because you have that great respect for one another. And remember, I really want to go over this again. If a coworker makes this kind of remark, and they wouldn't use all those big words. Remarks, do not agree in any way. Okay? So someone says something, and you don't really agree with it, but you don't want to rock the boat. So they say something, a racist remark about someone walking in, and they start laughing. They look at you, and you sort of, you don't really want to say it, but so you sort of smile. Do you know that smile means you just agreed with them? You need to be very careful. We need to be very careful as employers not to allow just that little smile when you know that something was wrong, and don't make that correction right away. It said over there, and when Sarah was teaching, to make that correction swiftly, so that, swiftly with great compassion, but very sternly, to let them know that that's not acceptable. I so enjoyed listening to Sarah, and I hope you all enjoyed listening to me. I just know that the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program is a life-changing program, and I do thank you for joining us, and at this time I do welcome you back next week.